Yo, what's going on, Dragon Ballers? Welcome back to another video. In today's video, we're talking about a topic that's been on the minds of the community for quite some time now, and that is Veg X. In today's video, we're talking about the anatomy of Veg X and what makes it so broken. So, guys, if you're new here, make sure to subscribe, hit that bell so you don't miss a video. If you want to help support the channel, there are many free ways to do so. You can always like the video, maybe share the video, maybe watch an ad. And if you guys want to pre-order or buy any of the cards you see in today's video, it would help out a lot if you use my link in the description to TCG Player. All that stuff's really helpful, guys. I appreciate each and every one of you guys does that for me. That being said, let's get started. So, Vegeks. What is the issue with Vegeks? Well, we see this every so often where there is a format warping deck. It happens, I don't know, maybe once a year. I mean, we haven't really had this in almost like 9 months at this point, I would say. So what a format warping deck is, it basically tells you, hey, you have to play this deck. In this case, it's Vegeks, but in the past we've seen Storm, Mecha Frieza, Shenron Gogeta, Shenron Ramp, things like that. So either play the format warping deck or play a hard counter to the deck or play something else. Now, your best shots of winning a major tournament when there is a format warping deck is either playing the deck itself, in this case Vegeks, or the hard counter. Now, this is not going to be a video talking about counters to Vegeks. I did a video on that last week. I'll link it in the description if you want to see it, so make sure to check that out if that's what you're looking for. This is a bit of a different video, but this video will help you understand how Vegeks works, and that in and of itself can help you beat Vegeks as well. But back to what I was saying, you either play Vegeks or you play the hard counter, because if Vegeks is going to be such a high representation in the room, it makes sense to play the counter. But if you get paired up against something that isn't Vegeks and your deck is fully tuned to beat Vegeks, well, you're going to struggle in those other matchups that aren't Vegeks because your deck isn't built to beat Vegeks. Of course, there are sideboards, but do you want to take an automatic loss game one because you felt like you had to build your deck just to beat Vegeks? No, not really. That feels pretty bad. And Marcus actually talked about this in the free Patreon article we did on Sunday. He talked about this unhealthy triangle format where you have Vegeks, counter to Vegeks, and then other decks, and they kind of go in that triangle. But it's such an unhealthy format because it becomes auto wins and auto losses. If you play Vegeks, you beat all the other decks. If you play all the other decks, you beat the counters to Vegeks. And if you play the counters to Vegeks, you beat Vegeks. Now, is this set in stone going to happen? No. And a lot of people will tell you that Vegeks is okay, that Vegeks isn't a problematic deck. But three things here. One, I've played the deck. Two, I've played against the deck a lot. Three, me and my teammates and a lot of high profile players are talking about the deck being problematic. So 9 times out of 10, I will take their word for it, but I don't have to take their word for it because I have played against this. I recognize the Storm Syndrome. I recognize the ultra hyper aggressive strategy. And in this game, Dragon Ball Super, hyper aggro, when it's too good, is very unfair. And I'll explain why as we go through the video. So do I think it's problematic? Yes. Am I going to explain that? Yes, I'm going to start explaining that right now. So here is a base list to go off of. This is actually the list that Marcus played on his stream last week. So this is not a deck profile video. This is just here basically to give us a baseline. So a little bit of math here. I'm not a math whiz, but I can do some simple stuff. So total cards in that deck list was 60. The cards we want to mill, we have Trunks, Vegeta, Supreme Kai of Time, Saiyan Instincts, Nagrishi, Viara, the Unison, we have the Black Mass Saiyan 4-drop, and then we have the Analaza. That comes out to 32 of our 60 cards. So more than half of our deck is cards we want to mill, and that number can change depending on situation. Like sometimes you'll want to mill the Hachiac to then play it later, so that can add or subtract a little bit from that number, but this is the baseline number we're going to go with. A lot of times more than half your 60 card deck is going to be cards that you want to mill. So let's assume between our life and our opening hand, which is 14 cards, 6 cards in hand, 8 cards in life, 5 of the 14 cards are ones that we want to mill so they aren't in our deck. So this is basically giving some discredit to Vegeks. Let's say, kind of a bad case scenario, 5 of the cards you want to mill are not in your deck, so you can't mill them. They're in your life or they're in your hand. So that brings our number down to 27. So this is a hypergeometric calculator. I've dealt with this several times on the channel before, so I'll explain it for you guys that don't understand how it works. So population size, that is going to be our deck count. So once we take our life and our hand out of our deck, we're left with 46 cards. Then number of successes in the population, that's how many of the cards would be successes, would be how many we want to mill. So I said that 5 of them are between our life and our hand. Just say we got a little bit unlucky. So that means that our number of successes is 27, 32 minus 5. Now our sample size, the sample size is going to be the amount of cards we mill, because within the amount of cards we mill, that's going to tell us, you know, well, how many of these cards did we mill that we wanted to mill. So sample size is 5 because Vegeks mills 5, and then number of successes in the sample, this is just the math for if we were to mill 1 copy of a card that we wanted to mill. And of course there's some cards you want to mill early, some cards you want to mill later. That math is very, very complex, so obviously we're not dealing with that here on the channel. Again, I'm not a math genius, but this is some simple stuff that I can explain to you guys. So the hypergeometric probability of X equaling 1, so of getting 1 success in a mill 5, comes out to almost 8%. Now that seems very, very low, but what I want to point your attention to is the bottom 2 rows here. Cumulative probability of X being greater than 1 or X being greater than or equal to 1. So your odds of milling more than 1 card that you want to mill in this example is 92%. So 92% of the time you're going to mill more than 1 card that you want to mill. And then, you know, X equaling or being greater than 1, that's 99%. So the sweet spot is actually 3 cards. I did the math on several different entries. So if you put 3 in number of successes, you actually get a rate of X equaling about 37%. So that means you're going to mill the cards you want to mill being closer to 3 most of the time rather than not. It's a little bit complex, but I mean, we know Vegeks is consistent. I don't have to explain to you guys that Vegeks is consistent, but the math is just kind of in its favor. I wanted to show you guys that little bit of information, but we know it's consistent. We know it's powerful. We know it's a very meta dominating deck. Even the people that are saying, you know, it's fine, it's okay, it's healthy. I mean, I don't really know anyone saying that, but if you are saying that, you at least have to admit the deck is definitely going to be meta, and a deck can't be meta unless it's relatively consistent. So we know it's consistent. We have these 3 cards here paired with the Unison that basically get played for free if your leader's a black sand and you mill them. So your leader generally will have a smaller hand size. I mean, he does draw 1 just like any other leader does, but there are a few things in the deck that require you to discard. So keeping that in mind, he won't always have the biggest hand, but I really like the way Marcus put it in that article on Sunday as well. What if your leader said activate main, draw 3? That is a lot of times what Veg X does, and I just showed you actually the math that milling 3 cards you want to mill is highly probable in Vegeks. Milling more than 1 card you want to mill is highly probable in Vegeks. So let's say you mill 5, you draw 1. That's Vegeks leader effect. If you mill any combination of these cards, they get played onto the board. Now, at the worst case scenario, they're 5k combos. So essentially, it's like you drew cards. So you drew 1 off your leader. Let's say you milled a Supreme Kai and a Trunks. That's almost 2 more draws you can consider that to be. Now, what makes the deck hyper aggressive is the fact that you have the Unison, which, you know, also gets played for free when it's milled. You have the +2, discard a card, gain plus 10k. Now that discard a card effect, and there are a few other discard effects in the deck as well, that does drop your hand size a decent amount, but I mean, you have other cards in the deck that mitigate that, which is another one of the problems with the deck, which makes it very unfair, is that you're able to run Sand Instinct's Goku very easily. You're also able to run the Bibbidi super combo, which, you know, at a certain point, you have so many cards in your drop area and your warp that the damage you take from a Bibbidi super combo is basically infinite, so that low hand size doesn't even really matter in that sense. But anyways, you have your aggressiveness with the free Unison, you have your aggressiveness with the free Vegeta, and then you have your Universe 3 extenders, which in my opinion, the Universe 3 extenders are the main reason why this deck is so broken. Now, you can't tag out Viara into Vegeta. It doesn't work that way because Vegeta warps itself when it would leave the field, so it's not a valid target for Viara. But you have your Nagrishi tagging out with your 3-drop Trunks blocker we just saw in the previous slide. You have your Viara tagging out with the 4-drop Black Mass Sand and some other 4-drops you have in the deck. So the numbers work out very, very well as to where the U3 cards are free value. Now, one of the things you'll hear oftentimes with Vegeks is that it's a 0 energy deck. They get to play the game with 0 energy. They can charge like up to 3 energy, stop charging, even though a lot of times they can honestly play with 0 energy, and that's really scary. I mean, a lot of these lists don't play negates. They play very minimal 10k combos. They play like Further Instruction Champa, maybe Supreme Kai, the Double Striker, maybe like Demigra SCR. But a lot of times they're playing very low to the ground, very aggressive, no need for negates. Now, again, I just mentioned that all these things are played for 0 energy, and that's crazy high value. That's what allows the deck to be very aggressive. Now, you look at a card like Great Ape Bardock Raider's Warcry. It's a 4-drop 20k double striker that you can bring in for 2. So yeah, you could cheat in the cost. Obuni After Image Slash, it's a 4-drop that spawns 3 15k tokens. Now, if you take a look at the typical 15k, like most of them are 2-drops, so you could say Obuni's a 4-drop, you could say the 15ks are 2 drops each, so that would be 2, 4, 6, 10. You could say you're getting 10 energy worth out of Obuni, and yeah, that is super powerful. You're also getting energy on tap there. And then you have SS4 Heartfelt Plea. This is actually another free play in the sense of like a huge boss monster, but it does require setup. It does require you to have a 25k red battle card on the board. Generally, that's going to cost you at least 2 to 3 energy, and then it requires your leaders awaken. All that's required from Veg X is just saying activate main. Activate main, you have your very high chances of milling the cards you need. They cost 0 to go onto the board. That's your Trunks, your Supreme Kai of Time, and your Vegeta 4-drop. Then you're also milling your Universe 3 pieces. You're also milling your BMS 4 to bring out with your Vegeta Reluctant Reinforcements. So all that is done for 1 energy. Your ideal turn 1 play is milling as many of your key pieces as you hopefully can, and then using the Trunks Overwhelm to bring out Vegeta Reluctant Reinforcements to then next turn bring out your 4-drop BMS that's going to start critting your opponent's life. So yeah, this deck is really powerful and really stupid. It does cheat costs like many other decks in the game that we've seen. Think yellow with Raider's Warcry and Bergamo Ferocious Roar. Think red yellow with SS4 Harfo Plea. But this deck does it so early that most decks can't stabilize. They can't generate enough advantage to defend against it, and they can't do anything about it because Vegeks is doing this all on turn 1, turn 2. That is very, very hard to deal with as just about any other deck in the game. You know, a lot of times people say Vegeks is playing a different game. They're not playing Dragon Ball. Why do they say that? Because this deck is not using energy. Most decks in Dragon Ball, even if they use a little bit of energy to bring out a big battle card, at least they had to use energy. So that's my main argument in this video. This deck does free things very early on. It's very unfair. And I mean, it's the similar thing we've seen before with Storm. You know, Storm, sure, you pay 1, you get your Bardock, you get your Goten, but you have the Unyielding Spirit Trunks to make that basically a 0 energy investment. And I've done a whole video, I've done many videos on Storm, so I'm not going to recap that, but it was the same thing. Free aggro is very, very degenerate in this game where you have to spend so many cards to defend against it. It is very unfun, very unfortunate. I think if Vegeks just said you can only play Black Sands and Black Gods to the board, I think this deck could be very easily fixable, very, very balanced, and probably pivot more to a mid-range with the Vegeks cards we're seeing in set 10. But that's just my opinion. So I want to know in the comments below what you guys think. Let me know what you guys think about Vegeks. Do you think it's fair? Do you think it's unfair? How would you fix it? Let me know in the comments below. Thank you guys for watching, and I will see you guys next time.